Hello and welcome. My name is Christina from Empowered Creator. I am a mindset and conscious manifesting teacher and coach, and this is my YouTube channel. Here I talk about all things law of assumption, mindset, conscious manifesting, the quantum universe, and a lot more. And my goal is to simplify everything without the fluff. So if you guys like this content and you would like to see more of it, I would love it if you would subscribe to this channel, comment on this video, like it, share it, and stick around. Also, if you need help with your specific situation, I offer one-on-one coaching as well as custom subliminals for whatever needs you may have. I also have some self-study courses about manifesting your specific person. So if you're interested in any of these services, the links are below in the description box. Click on them and they're going to take you to my website. With all that being said, let's dive into today's video. In today's video, I want to address a topic that seems to confuse people quite a lot. And that has to do with the difference between daydreaming and visualizing and whether daydreaming manifests or not. So I want to touch on this question and on these topics, elaborate a bit on them and explain them to you guys so that they become more clear. So this is what I'll be discussing in today's video. Stay tuned. So this is a question I get from time to time and it seems to confuse a lot of people quite a bit. And that is, what is the difference between daydreaming and visualizing for manifesting? And does daydreaming actually ever manifest? In other words, if I sit there daydreaming, will my daydreams manifest or not? So first of all, let's start with the difference between daydreaming and visualizing. As you can probably guess, the two are actually quite similar. They both involve imagination. They both involve creating images and pictures with your mind. If you're not creating pictures and images, maybe you're having inner conversations with people or with yourself about different situations. Or maybe you're just sitting there telling yourself, wouldn't it be nice if this and this happened? Wouldn't it be wonderful if such and such happened? And so on. All of this is daydreaming. Visualizing is quite similar to that. It is creating pictures and scenes and images with your mind and with your imagination for the purpose of achieving a certain goal. That goal being whatever it is that you're manifesting. And when you're visualizing, you may also use your senses. You may try to make it more real. You may try to get into the feeling of it, all for the specific purpose of manifesting whatever desire it is. So clearly, both practices involve imagination. The difference between the two is that usually daydreaming is not focused on a specific desire. Usually daydreaming is not done with any specific purpose in mind. A lot of the time, daydreaming is fleeting images, fleeting thoughts, fleeting inner conversations. You might be jumping from thing to thing in your imagination while you're daydreaming. In other words, you're not disciplining your imagination at all to concentrate in one thing, one topic, one person, and so on. Daydreaming, of course, also tends to be more spontaneous. It tends to be less organized. It tends to be less planned or not planned at all. And in other words, it's not usually a conscious act. It's not usually a planned act. It's not an act that has purpose behind it. And it often lacks attention and focus and concentration on whatever the specific subject is. Visualizing, on the other hand, while the practice is very similar to daydreaming, tends to be a planned practice. It tends to be a conscious practice. It tends to be something that you do for a specific purpose. In other words, it has a purpose behind it. Like I said earlier in this video, maybe you decide to engage your senses also in your visualizing to make it feel more real to you. Maybe you decide to try and engage your feelings as well. Maybe you decide to loop it in your head over and over and over again to get into the feeling of the wish fulfilled. All of these things show that it is something that is done with a purpose, and it is something that is done for a certain cause and for a certain reason, and it is done consciously, it is done in a planned way, it is done in a more organized fashion, and as such, it is more planned, more deliberate, and with greater focus on the thing that you want. Also, hopefully when you're visualizing, you're paying attention to where your attention is going. And if you catch your mind wandering, you bring it back to the imaginal act. Just because, as we said, it's a purposeful act. It's something that you do for a specific reason, which is not something that we generally tend to do when it comes to daydreaming. So this is, you guys, the main difference between the two. Daydreaming is unplanned, it's random, it's unconcentrated, unfocused. Visualizing is done with a purpose, it's done for a reason, and it's conscious and concentrated. Now, does daydreaming actually manifest? Yes, daydreaming can and does manifest at times. However, generally speaking, of course it depends on the person, but generally speaking, our daydreaming acts tend to manifest much less than what we visualize. And the reason for that goes back to exactly what I just said. Daydreaming tends to be a fleeting practice. It tends to be unconcentrated, whereas visualizing is done with a purpose and it's usually repeated, it's usually done consistently, and it's usually done deliberately. As such, it has a higher chance of manifesting because you're putting more energy into it. You're spending more time with it. You repeat it more. You go back to it. You revisit it over and over. So in other words, you're paying more attention to it. You're giving it more energy. When it comes to daydreaming, especially if you're more advanced in your manifesting, you may be surprised to find that some of your daydreams also manifest. That is thanks to your overall higher baseline state that can often allow even fleeting thoughts to manifest, and in general, it allows things to manifest more and faster. But compared to visualizing, daydreaming always tends to be a little weaker as far as its chances to manifesting are concerned. Another factor also that may be present with daydreaming that is not usually present with visualizing and might stop daydreaming from manifesting is that a lot of the time when we catch ourselves daydreaming, we tend to stop ourselves. We tend to tell ourselves to stop fantasizing, for example. We tend to tell ourselves that this is not realistic, this is never going to happen, this is impossible, so stop thinking about it. And so we stop ourselves at that moment from daydreaming, thinking about it, imagining it, and so on. With visualizing, because it is a deliberate act and because it has a purpose behind it, we tend to do that much less. Yes, we may still get resistance. Yes, we may still get opposing thoughts, but we don't usually tend to deliberately stop ourselves from going there. It's actually quite the opposite. We're trying to get ourselves to go there more and more and more, and to actually feel it and embody that state and that imaginal act, which usually when it comes to daydreaming, especially for people who are not versed in conscious manifesting, most people tend to stop themselves, feel guilty about what they were daydreaming, even reprimanding themselves for daydreaming whatever it was. And in general, in daydreaming, we tend to stop ourselves from going there much more than we do with the deliberate visualizing. But that being said, yes, it is absolutely not impossible that your daydreaming acts might manifest, and you might actually have had this experience already. And so this is really what is the difference between the two, why visualizing tends to manifest much more than daydreaming, but daydreaming also has a chance of manifesting. You never know. However, as we all know, if you are particular about a desire, if you really want a desire, if you really want a specific experience coming to your 3D, you are much more likely to see it manifested if you employ visualizing and all the other conscious techniques to actually bring it forth to your 3D reality versus mere daydreaming. With all that being said, I'm going to wrap up this video here. I intend that this has helped. As always, I very much appreciate you guys being on this channel, watching this content. I love making this content for you. And as always, I look forward to seeing you all at the next video. Until then, take care and bye-bye.